anyone that has an excessive number of code violations found by the Office of Administrative Hearing should be banned from any assistance from the district, be that tax relief or otherwise loans. There are public policy solutions to this problem. I commend you for beginning to look at it, but I hope that you are able to devote extensive resources, both in your staff and whatever other resources you may have available to you to solve this problem prospectively. And obviously we need to fix this emergency situation, but let's make sure it doesn't happen again as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldstein. Ms. Bryant. And good evening.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Jennifer Bryant. I'm a Congress Heights resident and an organizer with Organizing Neighborhood Equity DC. I first met Mrs. Barnwell, Mr. Green, and the other tenants at the Congress Heights buildings in the summer of 2015. I was appalled to learn that senior citizens like Mrs. Barnwell were being forced to live in slum conditions by their building's owner. It troubled me for many reasons. First and foremost, I believe in one of the core tenets of One DC's People's Platform, which is that housing is not a privilege, it's a human right. All people deserve safe, livable housing. The fact that the city allowed Sanford Capital to let the properties deteriorate to the point where many units are uninhabitable is criminal. Before I proceed with my written testimony, I want to say something for the record in relation to Mrs. Ward's testimony. It was Anthony Mohammed from my ANC 8E, who testified before the Zoning Commission in favor of Sanford Capital. He does not represent our community. Sandra Seegers does not represent our community. Both Mr. Muhammad and Ms. Seegers stand to benefit directly from the CBA they created with Sanford Capital without community input. They should both be ashamed of themselves. Back to my written testimony. Listening to Ms. Barnwell speak at the Zoning Commission, I learned that she has been working her entire life. She has contributed her labor, time, and energy to this city, and this is no way to repay her. Many senior citizens are on fixed incomes and will not be able to pay the astronomical rents that come along with so-called mixed income developments. When people reach their golden years, they deserve to be taken care of, not abandoned. When the market is allowed to dictate housing costs, we all lose.
Oh, come on, what's the issue here?
Children are protected from millionaire developers like Sanford Capital. A good start would be for City Council to affirm that housing is a human right for all people and create policies centered on the values of non-speculative, decommodified housing. Further, I support two recommendations put forth by Justice First. First, the DC Council needs to pass a bad actor law. This needs to be paired with a clawback provision which states that any entity that is clearly guilty of constructive eviction of this type should be forced to forfeit any district loans, grants, or tax relief on all projects in which they're involved. It's not enough to just pass these laws, though, you have to enforce them. Second, DC Council should commit $50 million of affordable housing funds to limited equity housing co-ops. They've been proven to create a permanent affordability and housing stability for low-income residents, and we already know they work because our city has the second highest number of housing cooperatives in the nation after New York. The first building to receive these funds should be the Tenants Association in the Congress Heights buildings. DC Council has the opportunity to turn a terrible, inhumane situation into a precedent for the rest of the city and the nation. In conclusion, I stand in solidarity with my neighbors, and our community will not let these Sanford Capital slumlords win. Save Congress Heights.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. If there could be a little less applause.
How does an entity receive PUD approval when they don't control all the properties in the development?
I agree that is an excellent question. I'm not familiar with the PUD process because it's managed by the Office of Planning. I think the question would be best answered by the Office of Planning.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to give you more details.
Well, that's understandable. So getting back to the chairman's question, I think what's troubling is that it doesn't sound like DHCD has a plan, and perhaps only decided to really dig into this after there was a lot of press scrutiny of the project. So can you, Ms. Ladd, can you explain again, because I tried to follow along when you were answering the chairman, but what is DHCD's plan? How do you plan to deal with 3200 13th Street? And what is DHCD's concern or plan of action about this property and the development and its impact on the rest of the development?
Sure. Thank you for that opportunity, Councilmember Silverman. I would